Evan Hale had always considered himself cautious, the kind of man who measured every word before he spoke it. That made him perfect for his new assignment, or so he thought. He was a human linguist, sent to the outer rim of explored space to work on a diplomatic station that hosted species from all corners of the galaxy. Humans were newcomers, fragile and small in the eyes of most, but here, every species watched each other with curiosity and suspicion. The station itself was a marvel of design, a rotating cylinder that mimicked gravity with centrifugal force. Inside, walls of metal glimmered with soft lights, screens streamed real-time data from nearby systems, and corridors hummed with activity. Ships of every shape and color docked outside, their crews mingling in the public areas. Evan had spent the first few days observing and learning. There were many languages, many customs, and mistakes could be dangerous. His first official assignment was simple, or at least, that's what his supervisors told him. He was to assist in live translations for cultural exchanges, particularly when humans met other species in formal gatherings. It seemed straightforward. Speak what the translator dictated, avoid slang, avoid humor, and above all, avoid offense. Evan walked down the main corridor, adjusting his translation device clipped to his collar. The device was tiny but powerful, capable of analyzing speech and providing instant translations. Still, it had limits. Dialects, inflections, cultural nuances, these were tricky, and the device could only do so much. For that, Evan's human intuition and careful study were needed. He rounded a corner and almost collided with Commander Sareth. She was tall, elegant, with a frame that suggested both strength and grace. Her skin shimmered faintly in the artificial light, like polished bronze, and her eyes glowed with a sharp intelligence. Evan had been warned that Sareth was one of the most respected diplomats of her species. She carried herself with the authority of someone who had survived wars most humans could not imagine. "Apologies," Evan said, stepping back quickly. His voice was calm, but his heart raced. Sareth inclined her head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. Her voice, when she spoke, was smooth and controlled. "Do not apologize, human. Observation is wise. Action can wait." This was the perfect opportunity to test a phrase he had been practicing, a word in her language that supposedly expressed respect. He had spent weeks memorizing it, trying to pronounce it perfectly. According to his research, it meant, "I acknowledge your strength." It rolled off his tongue, harsh in some parts, soft in others, exactly as he had practiced. The station went quiet, not just a moment of silence, but a sudden, palpable stillness that spread across the room. Conversations halted, screens blinked, and even the machinery seemed to pause. Evan froze, feeling an unease that crawled up his spine. Sareth's head tilted slightly, her eyes narrowing. Her lips parted, and the words she spoke were clear and deliberate, shocking in their simplicity. The translator device on Evan's collar whirred, trying to process the exchange. He swallowed hard. What?" he stammered, struggling to understand. Sareth repeated the phrase, her tone firm, leaving no room for misinterpretation. "Do you want to marry me?" His heart pounded and a cold sweat broke out across his forehead. He had accidentally triggered something profound, something he did not understand. An aide stepped forward hesitantly. "Commander, sir, what does this mean?" "It is not playful. It carries consequences." He realized something terrifying. In speaking that one phrase, he had stepped into a ritual older than most human civilizations. It was not about romance. It was about honor, trust, and power. It was binding, unbreakable in the eyes of Sareth's people. Sareth stepped closer, her presence commanding the room. "Do you understand what you have said, human?" Her voice was calm, almost gentle, but there was an edge that made Evan's chest tighten. I did not mean I was trying to show respect," he said, words faltering. I didn't know." How had a single phrase spoken in error escalated so quickly? He had been careful, meticulous even, and yet here he was, standing at the center of a storm he had unknowingly created. The station's director approached, her expression tight. "Evan, can you explain this?" she asked, whispering to avoid offending anyone. I mispronounced a word," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I thought I was expressing respect, that's all." He had never been involved in anything larger than human academic disputes, and now he was at the center of interstellar diplomacy. His thoughts were chaotic, bouncing between panic and rationality. Sareth watched him carefully. "We must follow tradition," she said. "There are procedures to resolve this. Public dishonor is one option, but it carries risk. Acceptance is another." "You have little choice, human." He thought about humanity, small, underestimated, and often dismissed by older, stronger species. Here, humans were considered weak, fragile, insignificant, yet somehow in this moment he held leverage. A single human by accident had drawn the attention of one of the galaxy's most respected diplomats. He looked at Sareth. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes shone with curiosity. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Follow the ceremony," she said simply. "It is not dangerous if you understand its meaning, but understand this: your actions will be observed, others will test you, your species will be tested through you." He had signed up to translate words, not navigate rituals that could define the fate of civilizations. Yet here he was. His own mistake had created a responsibility far beyond anything he had ever imagined. The aide stepped forward again, this time offering a small, portable device. "This will help explain the procedures," he said. "It will translate context, obligations, and consequences. Study it carefully." She was patient but unyielding. Her presence radiated power, calm, and authority. Evan understood in that moment that surviving this ordeal would require every ounce of human ingenuity and courage. As the room buzzed back to normal, conversations tentatively resumed. Evan knew he could not back down. The galaxy was watching, and human pride demanded he act with thought, courage, and cleverness. He took a deep breath, focusing on the device, the language, and the ritual ahead. One word had changed his life. One word had changed humanity's position in the galaxy, and one word spoken in ignorance might yet teach him the true meaning of respect, commitment, and power. He had made a mistake, yes, but humans thrived on mistakes, on challenges, on the impossible. If he could navigate this, if he could survive the ritual, if he could endure the eyes of countless observers, he would prove something about humans that no one, no species, had yet understood. The journey had begun. Evan spent the night alone in his quarters, the small cabin quiet except for the low hum of the station systems. His mind was anything but quiet. Every word he had spoken, every gesture, seemed to have magnified into something enormous. He had always thought humans were insignificant on the galactic stage, yet here he was, holding influence he did not understand, over events he could barely control. He opened the small device the aide had given him. It glowed softly in the dark, translating the words of Sareth's culture in careful detail. The device explained the nature of the bond he had accidentally invoked. It was far more than a personal commitment. Among Sareth's people, marriage was a fusion of trust, honor, and strategic alliance. It tied not only individuals but also their communities, their resources, and even their influence in matters of diplomacy and war. Evan ran his fingers over the smooth edges of the device. He realized that by speaking that single phrase, he had connected humanity to one of the most powerful species on the station, and possibly in the nearby systems. That connection could be dangerous, yes, but it could also be a chance for humans to step out of obscurity. The next morning, he was summoned to the diplomatic hall. The corridor was filled with delegates from various species, some curious, some wary. Whispers followed him, eyes tracking his every step. He felt a strange mix of fear and pride. Fear because he did not know what would happen next, and pride because, for the first time, humans were not being dismissed as weak or unimportant. Sareth awaited him at the center of the hall. Her posture was perfect, her eyes sharp and calculating. She spoke without raising her voice, but every word resonated in the silent chamber. "Human, the bond you have invoked must now be addressed. There are customs, obligations, and potential consequences. You cannot ignore them." Sareth gestured toward a long, low platform at the center of the room. "We will conduct the preliminary ritual. It is simple, but it requires focus. You must demonstrate comprehension of our values, your intent, and your capacity for endurance." They watched humans now with attention, not curiosity, and some with skepticism. For centuries, humanity had been underestimated, regarded as fragile, inefficient, and weak. Now, under the eyes of these observers, Evan represented an entire species. The ritual began with a series of questions. Sareth spoke in her native language, and the device translated. "Do you understand the implications of the phrase you have spoken?" "That is valued among my people." Every answer was an opportunity to demonstrate human qualities that other species often underestimated: creativity, empathy, and endurance under pressure. Hours passed. Evan felt exhaustion creeping into his muscles, but he pushed it aside. He thought of humanity, not the weak, small humans others assumed, but the resilient humans who survived impossible odds, who rebuilt after disasters, who refused to surrender even when every tool and ally failed. He realized that this was his chance to show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. At one point, a test required him to navigate a complex simulation of a battle scenario. Alien forces threatened a station, and Evan had to devise a defense using limited resources. The simulation was designed to challenge species that relied on strength or speed, but Evan relied on human ingenuity. He used the environment strategically, anticipated enemy movements, and improvised solutions in ways no algorithm had predicted. The observers murmured. The translators struggled to describe his decisions accurately. Sareth's eyes gleamed with interest. "Humans are unpredictable," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. Evan felt a spark of pride. Humanity had always survived against odds that seemed impossible. Now in this ritual, that same quality, their stubborn cleverness, was being recognized. After the tests, Sareth led him to a quiet chamber. "The preliminary ritual is complete," she said. "You have shown promise, but you must understand that the bond is more than personal. It is symbolic of connection between species. Refusal, delay, or ignorance can be dangerous. You must act deliberately." "What do I have to do?" Every word he had spoken before had consequences he had never imagined. He realized that the human trait of improvisation could be as dangerous as it was powerful. One wrong move, and the fragile balance of the station, and perhaps wider relations, could collapse. He spent the next few days learning more about Sareth's people, their history, their values, and their rituals. He discovered that the bond he had invoked was ancient, one of the few mechanisms in their society that forced honesty, bravery, and commitment. Those who survived it were respected and feared in equal measure. Those who failed were marginalized, or worse. Evan began to appreciate the subtle genius of the tradition. It was not about romance or affection, at least not in the human sense. It was about testing character, endurance, and the ability to make hard choices under pressure. It measured the worth of a being, not by strength or firepower, but by courage, creativity, and the capacity to protect others even at personal cost. By the end of the first week, Evan had grown more confident. He could anticipate the next steps in the ritual, and he began to see opportunities rather than threats. For the first time, he realized that humans had something unique to offer in this galaxy, not superior technology, not greater strength, but resilience, ingenuity, and determination. Sareth noticed his change. During a quiet moment in the observation deck, she spoke to him in a low voice. "You are different from others we have tested. Most species falter, they panic or submit. You adapt, you endure, you do not simply survive, you find ways to excel under pressure. You remind me that words alone do not define us. Actions reveal our truth. Your people have shown me that even the smallest beings can make a difference in ways larger ones cannot imagine." And yet here he was, representing humanity in one of the most delicate situations imaginable, proving that they were more than their size, their technology, or their numbers. When the next assembly was called, Evan prepared himself. He would meet the observers, the diplomats, and the generals. They would watch him, judge him, and assess the worth of humanity through his words and actions. He felt the weight of responsibility, but he also felt a spark of hope. Humans had always risen to challenges, and he intended to show them why. The assembly hall was massive, filled with species of every shape and color. Some floated, some walked on multiple limbs, some had skin that shimmered like liquid metal. They all watched as Evan stepped forward. The translation device relayed every word, but the room was tense, as though it could sense the stakes beyond language. Sareth introduced him formally. "This human has spoken words that carry great significance in our culture. He has agreed to follow our customs, and he will demonstrate his understanding and responsibility. Observe, but do not interfere." He took a deep breath, thinking of everything he had learned. He thought of humanity, small, resilient, clever, and unyielding. He thought of his own mistakes and how they had unexpectedly opened a door. He would not falter. As he began to speak, explaining his intentions, his understanding, and his willingness to accept temporary responsibility, he realized something remarkable. For the first time in his life, humans were not insignificant. Humans were not fragile. They were capable of shaping events in ways that even the most powerful species could not predict. And all of it had started with one accidental word. The day after the assembly, Evan awoke to an unusual alert. The station's communication systems were flooded with messages, many in languages he could not even recognize. Sareth entered his quarters, her expression sharp. "There is unrest," she said. Some species believe your actions are reckless. They question humanity's place in the galactic order. They may test us. By watching if you falter when pressured, it is not personal, it is how civilizations survive. An alien delegation, a coalition that had long looked down on humans, arrived unexpectedly in the docking bay. Their ships were sleek and dangerous-looking, gliding like predators, their crew bristling with authority. Their representative, a towering figure with obsidian skin and luminescent eyes, demanded an audience with Evan and Sareth. "You speak of commitment and alliances," the figure said, voice low and resonant. "Yet humanity is new. You are fragile. How can one human decide for an entire species?" "Then show us actions, not words." The simulation was realistic, and failure could mean virtual but vividly real destruction. He stepped into the control pod, studying the panels and holographic displays. Machines hummed around him, translating commands into the simulation. Evan's mind raced. He could not rely on strength or brute force. Humans were smaller, weaker, fewer in number. He needed to outthink the enemy, not outgun them. He observed the enemy's approach. Their ships were fast, agile, and well-armed. Standard tactics would fail. He focused on environmental factors, gravitational anomalies, asteroid fields, and sensor blind spots. Slowly, he began repositioning units, setting traps, and creating diversions. Hours passed, and the tension in the chamber was palpable. Outside, alien observers murmured among themselves, impressed and frustrated. Evan's hands moved rapidly over controls, issuing precise commands, improvising when unexpected problems arose. When one strategy failed, he adapted immediately, relying on intuition, reasoning, and an almost human stubbornness to succeed. At one point, the simulation projected a catastrophic failure. A human civilian transport was about to be destroyed. Evan's heart raced, but he spotted an alternative, redirecting a freighter through a nearby wormhole, creating a shield of debris that blocked the attack. He executed it flawlessly, saving the transport and forcing the enemy ships to retreat. The observers were silent. Even Sareth's expression betrayed a hint of surprise. "Impressive," she said quietly. "Humans adapt when others expect failure." "You have demonstrated skill," the figure said. "Perhaps humanity is not as weak as we assumed." There was no warmth in the statement, only grudging respect. Sareth placed a hand on Evan's shoulder. "You see, human, your species has potential beyond size or technology. It is ingenuity and endurance that define worth. You have proven that in this trial." Some were simulations like the first, others were debates on ethics, strategy, and diplomacy. One required him to negotiate peace between two species on the brink of conflict, using only information and logic. Another forced him to make decisions about resource allocation in a crisis. Each time, he relied on reasoning, empathy, and rapid thinking. Each time, he proved that humans could hold their own against centuries of experience and strength. Yet it was not without difficulty. He felt exhaustion creeping in. His mind was constantly alert, his body tense. He realized that while humans could endure, they were not invincible. He needed allies, and he had one in Sareth. Her guidance was invaluable, her presence a steadying force. She never took over, never dictated his actions, but she offered insight and perspective. Together, they formed a partnership that combined human adaptability with alien experience. One evening, after a particularly grueling set of trials, Evan stood on the observation deck. He looked out at the stars, glowing against the black void. The galaxy was vast, filled with species older, stronger, and more technologically advanced than humans. Yet despite all that, humans had something unique, the ability to endure, to adapt, to rise when circumstances demanded it. Sareth joined him quietly. "You are reflecting," she said, her tone neutral but attentive. "I'm thinking," Evan admitted. "Humans, we survive in ways other species don't. We improvise. We keep going when all seems lost. That's what they're seeing in me, isn't it?" But here, under scrutiny, his species' qualities were undeniable. His mistake had become opportunity. A single word had created a challenge, and humans were meeting it head-on. The next morning, a new alert arrived. A smaller fleet from a species that had historically ignored humans was approaching. Their message was blunt. "Human, your influence grows. Prove you are not a threat, or we will intervene." He studied the fleet's movements, analyzing patterns, predicting actions. He communicated with Sareth, devising a strategy that relied not on force but on cunning. They would use the station's layout, gravitational anomalies, and deceptive signals to make the approaching fleet overestimate defenses. Hours later, the fleet arrived. Sensors tracked their every movement. Crew members of the station held their breath. Evan's plan unfolded perfectly. Decoy ships, false communications, and strategic maneuvers convinced the fleet that the station was heavily armed and prepared for battle. The fleet hesitated, then withdrew, their mission aborted. A cheer went up among the station staff. Even Sareth's stoic expression betrayed faint approval. "Human ingenuity," she said. "It is remarkable. Today, humans proved that we are more than what others see. We survive, we adapt, we endure, and in doing so we can change the galaxy, not through domination but through action and perseverance." Yet he felt confident, not because he was stronger than others, but because humanity had something no one else could replicate: heart, mind, and the stubborn will to survive. Sareth joined him once more. "You have proven humans can rise to challenge," she said quietly. "Perhaps the galaxy will begin to see them differently. It's about surviving, thriving, and proving that humans have a place here." But for the first time, he felt that humans had not just survived. They had begun to influence, to matter, to inspire respect. A single word had started this chain of events, a word spoken in error. Yet it had revealed something far greater. Humans, even in their smallness, could shape the future through courage, cleverness, and persistence. The galaxy was vast and filled with dangers. But Evan understood now that humans had a quality the stars could not ignore. They adapted, they endured, and they never gave up, no matter how impossible the challenge. And so, as the station hummed quietly around him, Evan prepared for whatever would come next. Because humanity, small and underestimated, was only beginning to show its true power, the station's corridors buzzed with activity like never before. Delegates moved quickly, issuing commands and receiving reports, while sensors scanned the surrounding space for potential threats. Evan walked among them, his hands clenched tightly, his mind racing. What had begun as an accidental phrase had evolved into a chain of events far beyond his imagination. Every decision, every word, every move now carried weight. Sareth appeared at his side, silent but commanding. "The galaxy watches us closely," she said. Her tone was even, but her eyes conveyed urgency. "Every species here will test the limits of your intelligence, patience, and resolve. They will try to provoke mistakes." Their intent was unclear, but the atmosphere suggested confrontation. "We need to prepare," Sareth said. "Not for battle, but for diplomacy. The wrong words or actions could ignite conflict." If he failed, humans might be seen as reckless, their reputation tarnished before it could even form. If he succeeded, it could establish humanity as capable, clever, and resilient, a species worthy of respect among the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. He joined a strategy meeting in the station's central hub. Sareth and other senior commanders were already present, examining star charts and communication logs. The coalition had issued a series of demands, thinly veiled threats aimed at testing human resolve. Evan studied the data, considering every possible response. He spoke carefully. "We need to show that humans can adapt, but we also need to maintain credibility. We should respond with logic and strategy, not aggression. Let them see that we are capable of thinking beyond strength and intimidation." They would respond to the coalition in a way that demonstrated competence, intelligence, and resourcefulness without triggering hostility. Evan contributed ideas that combined human problem-solving with the knowledge he had gained from Sareth's culture. Together, they crafted a message that was firm, respectful, and subtly strategic, a message designed to show that humans were not easily intimidated. When the message was sent, Evan felt a surge of anticipation. He watched the station's screens as the coalition deliberated. Minutes stretched into hours, and the tension in the hub was palpable. Finally, the response came. The coalition acknowledged the message, adjusted their approach, and withdrew to monitor from a safe distance. A collective sigh of relief passed through the room. Sareth's hand rested briefly on Evan's shoulder. "You have done well," she said. "Your species' ingenuity is showing. Others cannot dismiss you." They claimed that his acceptance was insufficient, that he had not fully understood the consequences, and that humans should not be allowed to participate in rituals of such significance. Evan was summoned to a formal hearing. The chamber was enormous, filled with representatives from dozens of species. He stood at the center, facing scrutiny from every corner of the room. His palms were damp, but he forced himself to stand tall. Humans were under the spotlight, and he could not afford weakness. The lead diplomat addressed him. "Human, you have invoked a sacred bond without understanding its meaning. How can we trust your species to participate in our customs or influence our decisions? But I have learned. I have studied your culture, your values, and your customs. I have demonstrated understanding, adaptability, and the willingness to accept responsibility. Humans may be new, but we can learn and grow, and we have the resilience to endure challenges that others may fail. The lead diplomat narrowed his eyes. Words are easy. Actions matter. Can humans endure under pressure? Can they make difficult decisions for the good of many? And we take responsibility for our actions. His ability to improvise in complex situations impressed even the most skeptical observers. Sareth remained close, offering subtle guidance without overt interference. Her presence was a steadying force, reminding Evan that he was not alone, that humanity had allies, and that intelligence and integrity could overcome assumptions of weakness. By the end of the day, the chamber reached a consensus. The bond would remain recognized, and humans would be included in future diplomatic activities. The decision sent a wave of respect for humanity throughout the station. For the first time, Evan felt that humans were seen not as insignificant newcomers, but as capable participants with potential to influence galactic events. Despite the victory, challenges continued. New reports indicated that other species were observing closely, testing humanity through indirect means. Trade negotiations were scrutinized for mistakes, supply allocations were monitored for misjudgments, and minor misunderstandings were magnified into potential crises. Evan realized that humans would need to remain vigilant at all times, balancing diplomacy, strategy, and adaptability. One evening, Sareth brought Evan to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly, each one a distant sun, each with its own planets and possibilities. "You have done well," she said quietly, "but this is only the beginning. Others will continue to test you, to test your species. They will look for weakness, for mistakes. You must be prepared. That is why your species cannot be dismissed. Others underestimate you, and that gives you power. But power comes with responsibility. You must wield it wisely." He listened carefully to both sides, analyzing cultural norms, priorities, and unspoken motivations. Using logic, empathy, and creativity, he proposed a solution that satisfied both parties while maintaining balance on the station. The delegates hesitated, then accepted. His ability to resolve conflict without force demonstrated that humans could influence events through intellect and diplomacy rather than strength alone. Sareth watched him closely. "You are showing them that humans are capable of leadership, even under pressure. That is rare. If we can do that, then maybe others will stop dismissing us as weak." One evening, after a long day of meetings and mediation, Evan found himself alone with Sareth in a quiet chamber. The station hummed softly around them, distant stars visible through the windows. "You have grown," she said, "not just in understanding, but in influence. Others are watching and learning that humans are not easily dismissed." The phrase "I spoke by mistake," it forced me to act to prove that humans can endure. It was accidental, yes, but it revealed something important. Humans may be small, but we can shape events, even among species older and stronger than us. It is unusual, but it reflects truth. You have shown yourself worthy. The challenges were far from over. Other species would continue to observe, test, and provoke. But Evan understood now that humans had something unique, the ability to adapt, endure, and persevere. That quality alone could reshape assumptions, build alliances, and influence the galaxy. As he looked at Sareth, he realized that the accidental phrase, the binding word, had not just tested him. It had revealed humanity's potential. Small, underestimated, and often dismissed, humans had the ability to turn mistakes into opportunity, challenges into growth, and accidents into recognition. And in a galaxy that assumed strength came from size, age, or technology, that might be the most powerful quality of all. The station buzzed with activity once more, but this time the tension was different. Weeks of tests, challenges, and unexpected crises had passed. Humans were no longer underestimated. Evan walked through the corridors, aware of the way delegates watched him with a mixture of curiosity and respect. He carried the quiet weight of responsibility, knowing that the decisions he made now could shape perceptions of humanity for generations. Sareth met him at the observation deck, her presence calm and unwavering. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the windows, distant points of light in a galaxy filled with possibilities and dangers. "The final assessment approaches," she said. It will test not just your skill, but your judgment, your integrity, and the principles you represent. Are you ready? He had survived simulations, diplomatic hearings, and crises that could have escalated into disaster. He had proven human ingenuity, endurance, and adaptability. But he knew that this final challenge would not simply be about intellect or courage. It would test humanity's ability to act with wisdom in the face of unprecedented pressure. The call came from the station's command center. A large fleet had appeared near a nearby system, an alliance of species that had historically dismissed humans. Their intentions were unclear, but intelligence reports suggested they were preparing a blockade that could destabilize trade routes and create panic among weaker species. The situation required immediate coordination, strategy, and diplomacy. Evan entered the command center. The room was alive with holographic displays showing fleet movements, resource allocations, and communication channels. Sareth stood at his side, offering subtle guidance. "You will lead the human delegation," she said. "Your decisions will influence not just your species, but the outcome for all involved." The Alliance fleet was larger and more advanced than anything humans had encountered before. Traditional tactics would not work. He studied the terrain, the fleet patterns, and the communications. He realized that direct confrontation was impossible, but deception and strategy could create an advantage. He devised a plan. Using the station's advanced sensors and projection systems, he created holographic decoys, simulated fleet movements, and manipulated sensor readings to exaggerate the station's strength. He coordinated with allied species, distributing resources and providing guidance to ensure a unified response. Every move was calculated, yet flexible, allowing for rapid adaptation if the fleet acted unexpectedly. As the fleet approached, tension gripped the command center. Delegates watched silently, waiting to see if the humans could succeed where others might fail. Evan's hands moved quickly over the controls, issuing commands, monitoring outcomes, and adjusting strategies in real time. The fleet hesitated. Confusion spread among their ranks as holographic projections and subtle maneuvers suggested greater strength than reality. Evan anticipated their responses, redirecting decoys, altering apparent formations, and creating the impression of a coordinated, powerful force. The fleet's leaders realized they had misjudged the station's capabilities. After careful consideration, they withdrew, choosing caution over conflict. A collective cheer erupted in the command center. Even the most skeptical delegates nodded with respect. Sareth's expression, usually calm and unreadable, softened. "You have demonstrated that humans can influence events through strategy, intelligence, and courage," she said. "Not by brute force, but by skill and judgment." In the following days, the station held a formal assembly. Representatives from dozens of species gathered to acknowledge the outcome and discuss the implications. Evan and Sareth stood at the center, symbolizing a partnership that had begun as an accidental phrase and grown into a demonstration of mutual respect and capability. Sareth addressed the assembly. "The human presence here was once underestimated. Their actions have shown ingenuity, resilience, and courage. They have not only met challenges, but have influenced outcomes in ways that demand recognition. The bond between our peoples, though initiated unexpectedly, now reflects a true understanding of partnership, trust, and shared responsibility. Today, humans are not defined by what others assumed about us. We are defined by what we choose to do and how we rise to meet impossible challenges." The accidental phrase that had begun this chain of events had transformed into a symbol of human capability, a reminder that intelligence, courage, and integrity could outweigh age, size, or strength. Sareth turned to Evan, her eyes reflecting approval. "The bond is no longer accidental. It represents trust, understanding, and mutual recognition. You have shown not only yourself, but your species, the value of action guided by principle. That is rare and it is powerful." He realized that the same qualities that had sustained humanity on their home planet were now recognized across the stars. Adaptability, resilience, and ingenuity were more than survival traits. They were power. In the following weeks, humans gained a new standing within the interstellar community. Other species sought their counsel, included them in trade negotiations, and considered them capable allies. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage not as conquerors, but as participants whose decisions and actions carried weight. Evan continued his work on the station, translating, mediating, and advising. Yet he understood that the true achievement was not his alone. It was humanity's ability to rise above expectations, to endure, and to act with intelligence and courage in the face of unknown challenges. One evening, Sareth invited Evan to the observation deck. The stars shimmered, distant suns glowing against the darkness. "You have done well," she said quietly. "Your species has earned recognition, and your actions have influenced the galaxy. Yet remember, every opportunity carries responsibility. You must continue to act wisely. But now it will watch differently. Humanity is no longer dismissed. You have changed perception, not by force, but by intelligence, resilience, and moral clarity. That is extraordinary." He had faced tests, navigated crises, and represented his species with honesty and courage. Humanity had earned a place in the galaxy, not by dominating, but by enduring, adapting, and demonstrating the qualities that had sustained them through millennia. As he looked at the stars, Evan realized that this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers, and humans had only just begun to explore their potential. But for the first time, he knew that humans could meet challenges head-on and emerge stronger, respected, and capable of influencing the course of events. And perhaps most importantly, he understood that what humans lacked in size or experience, they more than made up for in courage, ingenuity, and the ability to rise when others expected them to fail. A single word, spoken by accident, had become a testament to human endurance, intelligence, and spirit. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.